What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is definitely a little different for me, and if I'm being honest, a little intimidating. I know that not everyone is comfortable talking about money, and I don't blame them. However, what I do want to do today is take away a little bit of that stigma when we discuss our personal finances. Before we get started, I'm hoping you guys can click on that like button for me, because I hope to bring you many more videos just like this talking about personal finance, savings, retirement, all of those weird in the air subjects. And by you clicking on that like button, it'll just help me out a little bit to make those videos. I want to start this off by saying I am in no way an expert. The biggest thing I want you to get out of my video is that you need to go out and do your own research. If my video is the tip of the iceberg for you and it gets you rolling down that hill of financial literacy, that is my only goal. I just know for a fact that this stuff is not easily accessible to everyone, and I want to help a little bit. So again, I'm not a financial advisor, and even though I went to school for accounting, I did not learn this stuff in school. I'm just a first-generation immigrant that didn't know much about anything, so honestly, I think I'm the norm. So hopefully you can relate to my situation and gain a little bit of perspective from what I'm about to tell you. This video is meant to be an introduction of some sorts. I'm not going to go into anything too in-depth, so to give you a quick overview on what we're going to be covering today, we're going to be talking about keeping track of your income, your expenses, and budgeting, and we're also going to be talking about saving. I'm hoping that if you like this type of video, I will make a video shortly that talks about retirement savings accounts and investing. And let me just stop right there, because I know that most of you are going to be completely turned off by the idea of talking about finances. And to be honest, so was I. I mean, honestly, who wants to sit here and talk about Excel spreadsheets and savings when all I really want to be doing is spending my money, having a good time, worrying about retirement, maybe in like a couple decades? And honestly, isn't investing and the stock market for rich people anyway? What do I have to worry about? This is where you are completely wrong. A strategy in saving and investing is just as much for you as it is for rich people. But because of your circumstance in life, you probably didn't know that. I'm using the term you here to actually talk to myself, because that's how I felt. I've spent the last few weeks watching as many YouTube videos as possible, reading as many blogs, as many articles, talking to everyone around me. If there's one thing that I can tell you that I found out, it's that this is accessible to a lot of people. And honestly, it's one of the best kept secrets. It's part of the reason why the rich keep getting rich and the poor don't really change. And not to get too philosophical on the whole subject, but there's a reason why we have never learned these things. It's because we don't come from wealth, our parents never taught us, our school systems never taught us, and believe me, I went on so many rants about how frustrated I was that I didn't learn this stuff at school, even though it is literally more valuable than most of the education I got. But to get to the gist of it, it is important, and it will help make you thousands of dollars, if not millions, by the time you are ready to retire. And if that doesn't spark some sort of interest in you, what I hope you realize is that you are potentially missing out because you don't have this information available to you. And it is your number one job right now to figure this stuff out. So let's talk about budgeting first. I would argue that keeping track of your income and your expenses is one of the most vital lessons you will learn in your life. So first, I'll tell you what you should start doing, and then I'll tell you why. So the overall concept here is just to keep track of how much you are bringing in every single month and how much you are spending every single month. And with that simple step, you can figure out how much you need to survive today and how much you can put away for your future. I want you to start keeping track of your monthly income. In my mind, that's sort of the bucket of water that you keep filling up every month. You can always take stuff away, but hopefully at the end of the day, you have a little bit remaining just in case. Next, I want you to start keeping track of your expenses every month. The best way to do this is to create categories for yourself. For example, I have categories like food, rent, car, entertainment, and I want you to take every single line item from your bank account, whether that's your debit card, your credit card transactions, wherever you spend your money. I want you to start taking those line items and just putting them into the categories that you've made. And at the end of the month, I want you to total them up. I want you to see how much you actually spent that month. And honestly, this may sound easy, but I don't want to take this lightly, because this is the first step to understanding that you have a direct impact on your financial future. Here's the part where I tell you the why behind what you're doing. You may think that this is super tedious and annoying, and it is, but I want you to get excited about seeing those numbers at the end of every month. I want you to get excited about seeing a positive number left over, about seeing some water left in that bucket at the end of every month. That is a great sign. I want to say right off the bat that there is an incredible amount of privilege that comes with having some water left in your bucket at the end of every month. But by doing this exercise every month, or even better, every week, you're gonna start to see some trends. And these are the trends that you can change. Obviously, there's stuff that we can't change. We can't change the amount of rent every month. I can't change my car payment, even though I really wish I could. What you can see though is that you are spending way too much on clothing and shoes. I'm definitely speaking to myself here. You are spending way too much on eating out. Again, speaking to myself. You are spending way too much money on Starbucks. I'm actually not that much of a Starbucks fan, so I'm not really speaking to myself. I'm speaking to all of my fellow millennials. You know who you are. When you take a serious approach to recognizing your spending habits, you will inherently find a way to make those changes. Your way of thinking about where your money goes just completely changes. And that is what this exercise will do for you. When you start to realize that that Starbucks purchase was an hour worth of your work, if not more, because Starbucks prices are ridiculous, you will start to question yourself the next time you go to that Starbucks, I promise. So when you start keeping track of how much you are putting in and then taking out of that bucket every month, you will start to get a sense of what you should actually be putting in and taking out every month. And this is where budgeting comes in. Budgeting is basically just taking long-term financial goals and breaking them down into small bits and pieces that you can easily digest. Say you realize that you are spending way too much money on groceries, like I did. Try and figure out an attainable goal, and that is your number for every month. It's okay if your actual spending is above or below that budgeted number. That just means that you need to adjust your budget a little bit, or just be a little bit more strict on how you're spending your money. But let's just say you're saving up for a house someday. Where is that $20,000 for a down payment going to magically appear in your bank account? Unless you have some sort of magical money-making abilities, you're out of luck. And if you do, please hit me up. So when you have that goal of having $20,000 for a down payment in 2 years, you can figure out how much water you need left in that bucket every single month leading up to that 2-year mark. That is the power of budgeting. It can help you get to your short-term and long-term financial goals. If you don't have that many financial goals right now, it can just help you get into that mindset of thinking about your personal finances. And if nothing else, it can help you stop going to Starbucks for that fruity summer drink that you could make from Meyer stuff for a fourth of the cost. If you just felt personally attacked by that statement, I'm sorry. But also, I'm not sorry. Next, we are on to one of my favorite subjects, which is savings. So you kind of have the background of why you need to figure out what you're spending, what you're saving, all of that stuff, but then what do you do with the amount that you're saving? The first place that you should really put your money into in terms of saving is an emergency fund. An emergency fund is, as the name would suggest, for use during emergencies. Let's say you lose your job tomorrow. Do you have enough money in your bank account right now to support yourself for the next month? What about the next 2 months? What about the next year? An emergency fund is what will help you through those difficult times. And that is a very real circumstance right now for a lot of individuals. Unfortunately, they're realizing that an emergency fund is extremely important. And I don't want you to be where thousands of Americans are right now, which is without enough money to cover themselves and their families for the next couple weeks. I know the anxiety that comes with thinking about that is immense, but I would rather you think about that right now when you can do something about it than when you are out of luck. So how much money should you start saving every month towards this emergency fund? Obviously, that depends on your personal situation. What I've seen recommended most often is to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in that emergency fund. So you would take the total of all of the monthly costs that you absolutely need to spend and see where that lands you. So that could be things like your rent, your car payment, your grocery bill. Take that monthly total and multiply it by 3 to 6 to figure out how much money you should have saved up for your emergency fund. I've also seen recommendations such as saving up a number of months of your total income, and that's not a bad idea either. It definitely depends on your circumstance, so figure out what's best for you. Even if that means saving $10 this month and $20 next month, that's okay. That's a start. So where do you put this money that's worth 3 to 6 months of your expenses? It's definitely not a small amount. You can't just store it in your couch. And I'll even take it a step further and say it's not enough to just keep it in a regular savings account. If you have a regular savings account like I do with Chase, your APY rate is actually very, very low. It's pretty dismal. The interest that you're accruing by keeping those thousands of dollars in there is pretty much non-existent. If you're getting pennies to your thousands of dollars, there's a better way to do it. The reason I say that you shouldn't necessarily keep thousands and thousands of dollars in your regular savings account honestly comes down to math. The interest rates in those savings accounts are usually really, really low. In fact, they're typically lower than the rate of inflation. What this means is that, say you deposit $1,000 into your savings account today. In a year from now, assuming that you haven't put anything else into that savings account, you still have that $1,000, right? Well, yes, but also no. That $1,000 isn't actually worth $1,000 anymore. It actually might be worth $990. Inflation is a very tricky subject, and we can have a whole video on inflation itself. But at the core, it just means that your money is losing value the more you have it sit and do nothing. And by do nothing, I mean just keep it in these savings accounts. And with your emergency fund, you want that money easily accessible to you, but you also want that money to not lose in value or depreciate. And when it comes down to the math of it, the interest that you are accruing in your regular savings account is not keeping up with inflation. If the interest rate in your savings account is 0.01% and the inflation rate is 1%, you're already losing money just by having it sit there. So the easiest thing to do to ensure that you can have that money immediately just in case something happens and your money isn't depreciating by just sitting in a regular savings account, open up a high yield savings account. Typically, these high yield savings accounts work just the same way as a regular savings account. They may have account minimums or a certain amount of money you need to have in order to open up their account, and they also typically have a limit of 6 withdrawals a month. But the biggest thing about high yield savings account is typically it has an interest rate that will keep up with inflation. And granted, that may not always be the case because interest rates on these high yield savings accounts are actually really, really low right now comparatively. But I can guarantee that they're higher than the interest rates that you are seeing in your regular savings account. So in my opinion, moving your money over from a regular savings account to a high yield savings account, maybe not all of it, maybe just the majority of it like I have, that's in your best interest because at least the majority of your emergency fund is not losing value, it's at least keeping up with its value. So going back to your overall savings goals, say you have your emergency fund, you're all set with that. Great, what's next? This is when your other long-term and short-term goals come into play. Like I mentioned before, what if you're saving up for a house in a year? Maybe you want to keep that money in a high yield savings account as well. What if you're saving up for a house in 5 years, but you still want that money easily available to you? Maybe the best option for you is to open up a CD. That's basically you giving up your money for a set amount of time and getting a set rate of interest back. There's plenty of other options out there. I just want you to start researching on what they are. And depending on your goals, figure out what is best for you. And that's pretty much it. Again, there's a lot of nuances of keeping track of your personal finances, of budgeting, and of savings, and I didn't get into all of them here today. And all I want you to do now is go out and start keeping track of all of these things. For some of you, you've already done that. This is a no-brainer for you, and in that case, amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. And for a lot of people I talk to, they don't do this, and believe me when I say there's no judgment coming from me if you don't. There's obviously 1,000 different ways to get to one goal. But this is one of the easiest ways to make one of the biggest impacts in your life, and I encourage you to take that step in this journey. Becoming financially literate in itself is a privilege, and it's a journey to get there. And you may not have been equipped to get there on your own. And for those of you who are in a similar boat to where I was a couple years ago, I'm hoping this is the start of something, that it sparks something in you. And again, there is no judgment here. If you don't go out tomorrow and do the things that I'm telling you to do, I'm not going to take it personally, nor will I think you're less intelligent for not listening to me. I just want to take a step towards making these kinds of topics less shameful or embarrassing or weird to talk about, because it really shouldn't be. You probably work at a job because you were trying to keep up with your expenses and you're trying to sustain yourself and your family for the next month, the next year, the next 50 years. So talking about how you are doing that and how you plan on saving for that future should not be this taboo topic. And I really want to make sure that it's not anymore. And again, I just want to remind you to take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not a financial advisor, nor am I smarter than you. And in most cases, I'm probably later to this personal finance journey than you are. So I encourage you to go out and do your own research about everything that I talked about here. What I'm actually hoping happens is that you guys teach me a thing or two about personal finance and saving and investing, because I am all ears, believe me. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoy this content, and don't forget to subscribe because I have plenty of more finance related videos coming up. And if finance isn't your cup of tea, I also do DIYs, I do dance, I do makeup, and sometimes fashion. And don't worry, I will continue to poke you with these uncomfortable topics. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch, and I'll see you guys next time.